Hi everyone, this is Lauren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal. With me today I have Alen Todorov from SEOmonitor. Alen, I'm gonna give you a quick chance to say hello.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me.
And today Alan's going to be presenting on how SEO agencies can stay profitable during a downturn. So this is a very special webinar. We put this together last week. Thank you, Alan, for taking the initiative to do so. We're going to be discussing actionable tactics that you can take right now within your company to assure that you're addressing issues and problems that have been unforeseen that are currently happening due to the spread of the coronavirus and to the downturn of the global economy. However, a lot of these actions and tactics are things that you should have as part of your overall contingency plan, no matter what, from an SEO agency perspective. I lived through the recession in 2008 when we saw very similar things happening, businesses pulling budgets, places closing down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There was not a pandemic at the time. We have that now. But for those of you that were not around during the last recession, or were not running agencies or working at agencies during the last recession, some of this may be new to you. So what better way to not only turn a profit, but to show your clients that you're steady, you're steady-handed, you're even-keeled, and you're prepared for a time like this, than putting together an action plan and continue to run your agency during this downturn. Before we get started, I'd like to go through a little bit of housekeeping here. So we're going to be launching one poll. Is that right, Alan?
Yeah.
One poll during the presentation. Like for everyone to go ahead and answer when that poll happens, so we can give Alan some great information from you about what's going on with you right now. Also, the official hashtag is #SEJwebinar. Please feel free to tell all your friends out there that you're currently in this presentation. We'll be making the presentation available for you afterwards, along with a written recap and the video, which will be available on SEJ's YouTube channel. We'll be sending that email out to all attendees and registrants after the presentation. After Alan is finished presenting, we'll also be opening things up for Q&A. And that's about it on my side. Alan from SEOmonitor, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lauren. And I want to thank you, SEJ, for agreeing to change the webinar on such short notice. We were supposed to talk about a new product that we were launching, about reporting system, but things changed and we had to move fast. And in order to do that, we need tools. And I'm going to talk to you today about some of the tools that you can use in order to better enhance your strategic thinking. So, how SEO agencies can stay profitable during a downturn. And for some of the SEO agencies, it could mean that only staying is something important to do right now. So, Lauren, back to you. I would love to learn more. How did the outbreak affect your current monthly recurring revenue? And it's really important to just notice it's monthly recurring revenue. I'm not referring to the one-offs, because those are the ones that could happen. But monthly recurring is the one that's going to predict the future of your company from now on. Sorry.
All right. So I've launched the poll. See, a lot of you have answered already. If you could take the moment to please do so ASAP. We have about 60% have answered. So we aim for 80% participation here. We'd love 90%. So I'll do a really quick countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm about to close the poll. Final chance. And Alan, I'm sharing the results. So 78% of attendees at today's webinar have said that the outbreak has affected their current monthly recurring revenue. And
it's kind of a,
said no.
I would say monthly recurring revenue is kind of a tongue twister, so we would just use MRR from now on. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope that it's up, not down. So let's think about what contingency means and how can you help yourself, your agency, and your executive team plan for this or plan to any other contingency from now on. So there is an important thing that I'm going to talk to you today. Things that I'm going to say, they might seem simple, and the fact of the matter is that they are. And I always wondered why I'm so drawn to the simple things, to like simple quotes or things that get repeated. And I think this quote from Samuel Johnson kind of gets it all together. I'm going to read it. I know you already read it, but I want to read it as well. People need to be reminded more often than they need to be instructed. So my job here is to take these simple ideas and help them make actionable for yourself. So let's go. I also have some considerations, and they're important. I know, and I'm thinking about every agency situation is unique. Some do cater to local businesses, while other works with enterprise customers. And if those enterprise customers are in travel, then the situation changes a lot. Now, the primary goal from now on is to maintain sustainability. And we're going to talk about how to do that. And the goal, I kind of share it at the beginning, is to work as a tool for strategic thinking. And when I say a tool, it's basically you would have access to this webinar recording, you'll have access to some PDFs that I'm going to share with you. Take them, print them, and just start to Zoom with your management team and think through them. Because the best time to think about what could happen in the future is now, when there is less emotion involved. So, any contingency plan starts with thinking and assessing the current situation. And when I say the current situation, I'm not referring to the hour-by-hour information that we got. I'm referring to the information that we know about our company. So our company didn't change because there was a major stimulus yet, and didn't change because there was the outbreak. It will change. So the current situation becomes a little bit wider than the hour-by-hour or minute-by-minute information. Strategy is not based on input based on minutes. It's mostly based on thinking about what are the outcomes. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So whenever thinking strategically, there is this phenomenal, simple, yet great tool where you could just split how you think about things in terms of external and internal. So you have internal things and external. On external, you can jot down the opportunity areas that arise or the risk areas in any kind of situation that's similar to what happens now. On the internal, basically what's happening, what is the thing that your agency eventually would output. So you have to think about people and also, most importantly, right now, cash. I'm going to talk about that. So let's take a few seconds to smile and be optimistic about opportunities. Opportunities refer to those situations where you could add more value once a certain event happens. So let's think about this one. We have the outbreak coming. Each state right now in the US is going to a lockdown or not. They are changing. We in Europe had it even earlier, but here in Bucharest, not early enough. And all the things are changing. So this immediately the nation is on lockdown. So it's really hard to think about, okay, is there any opportunity there, or would there be any opportunity if there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to be closed? This is your time to set aside all those thoughts that you might have and think about the things that could appear. Things like the fact that your cost per full-time employee could lower due to switching to a remote team. And I'm referring here to the cost, to the office costs or the office equipment costs that you would have to gather in an expensive city. There's also a very unique opportunity for a company that even has digital, or most of the companies have digital in their names, and I'm referring to digital marketing companies, right? So a lot of your customers, they are forced to do this change. It's not that they wanted to do or to switch to digital. They wanted to acknowledge or bring digital transformation immediately in their organization. You've been there. You've been with them. You've showed them the value of online, and now it could be an opportunity to even talk with them about how they could get to the point where they become productive using online means. And maybe for them, things like Zoom, they haven't heard until now, or other things, because it's not enough to only have, okay, just install Zoom, just like it's not enough to just start a Google Ads campaign or do SEO. All those things that you've acquired until now, all those information that you have as a digital company, you can share or even market to your existing customers. So we've talked about opportunities, and those are external. They refer to your customers, to your vendors. Now, when we talk about risk, there are a lot of risks. And I urge you that once you start doing the workshop by yourself or with the team, do not allocate a risk item without an action item that shows how to mitigate. So here, for example, what I'm doing, let me just get my pointer out. So here what I'm suggesting is using this table, a very simple one, right? A customer, an industry, and MRR. But once you start putting them all in a spreadsheet, do think about what are possible actions that you could make in order to mitigate the loss of that customer. And sometimes I might give some ideas in the webinar, but the most important idea that I want to give you now is that once you have a risk item there, a customer always have an action item. And the action item, you'll use it soon when we're going to talk about how to plan for the future. So we talked about external. Now we're going to move into the internal part. So there's a lot of disruption, and it's not the good kind. If your company is forced to work from home, or maybe your company was already remote, but your company's customers weren't. So they had certain ways of dealing with this. They had meetings, put in times and places. They would gather around for those meetings. So just imagine you are an SEO agency. You're very used to do remote, but you'll have to do a meeting with someone that the constraint of doing the meeting was the fact that they actually locked down that place in their office, or because they were at work already. So for them, those constraints, once they disappear, it's actually harder to make sense. So that's the time when you start thinking about your people, and you start thinking about how will you able, if you have to do this change with you, with your employees and your customers, to maintain the same work ethic. And there's a lot of information that goes through just having a meeting with someone, or just sharing, doing those town halls. Another thing that we see some agencies doing in order to track, to better understand what's happening, to better work with their employees right now, is to increase the staff meetings, increase communication, but also do it wisely. Like a quick tip that I would recommend is, if until now your usually conference calls were just like that, calls, just ask people to switch their video on. It's something that they will both appreciate, and other people in the call would appreciate as well. And that's for people that are not on lockdown as well. We'll start the camera on by default from now on. Cash, right? Now, cash doesn't refer only to expenses, even though I foolishly put there on expenses. It also refers to where does it go from, like what do you get, and also what things that are costing you right now. And you'll have a vendor, you'll have a cost, and it's very important, because I've talked about MRR right now. It's very important to have the variable cost. It's not now the one-offs. It's not the time for one-offs. We are talking about MRR and how can we keep the difference between the revenue and the variable cost in place. And just like with risks, it's the time to have a proposal in place. What happens if one of the vendor goes down? What happens if one of your agency from, I don't know, from another region, they just can't make it anymore because their access has been cut? This is the time to think about what was actually going on to your company, and think it empathically from a position where you both understand your customers, they come in with revenue, and people that you pay by yourself. So now moving on, we're going to move to the building part. So as I said, you assess the current situation, you'll have the external, internal. Now you've done that, and this should take you at least 3 hours or 4 hours. So I've rushed through it because we haven't talked about ideas, because the ideas will come from your management teams or employees, or depending how you usually do strategic work. And I'm going to say something really, really important that we learned. When we were the typical company where we would usually have a decision and then top bottom put it into place. What we've discovered lately is how important it is to gather around as a team and then debate and hear each concern. And it has two very interesting benefits. One, which is obvious, that you get a better range of ideas. One that isn't maybe that obvious, at least at the first try. Once you got that, this is now the team's plan. It's not the CEO's plan anymore. This is something that the whole team wants to do. So that's why if I would just say some ideas and then you would just propagate them to the management team, it would be hard to just put them in action. The plan is to get people around and think about them. So coming to the contingency plan. Now, there are 3 things for every company, be it an SEO agency, a digital marketing agency. And what I'm actually talking about, it mostly refers to companies of all sizes. Each company has 3 main functions: acquiring customers, managing customers, and retaining customers. So you could see how acquiring is really easy to think about, like what happens, what I do with acquire new customers. Managing comes in the place of operations. How are you able to manage an ever increasingly number of customers, if of course the acquire part works? And retaining, this is the most interesting part, especially for companies like us, because we are also an MRR based company. Retaining is actually, you're doing a little bit of acquiring customers every month, right? Because if someone pays a subscription for something, retaining, the moment of truth, happens every time you meet with them and you will send the invoice. So that's why there's a very interesting relationship between acquiring, managing, and retaining customers. So take those 3, because we're going to take those 3 through some scenarios. So now, as I showed you here, and this is the place where you're going to add ideas for what happens. But until then, until you get the full range of ideas, the ones that were the ones that existed from the work, from the first part that we already talked, they have to be put in place. And when I said put in place, I refer to the moments when you would want to act upon them. So some of them are preemptive. So you think about preemptive similar to maybe what we're doing here, like thinking about it, not doing any specific action, or think about the world, the whole globe 1 month ago. If you were to do something about retaining more customers or acquiring, that would have been preemptive. What you would do when things aren't that bad? Now, moving from preemptive are the what ifs. What ifs are usually in the range where there's a big cut, like I think an interesting metaphor would be like a cut to the muscle, like when there is a little bit of pain going on. So what would happen on all these three areas if there's going to be a cut? And it's usually on cash flow part. And there are the defensive ones. Now, if that was a cut to the muscle, this is even bigger. You can almost feel it. It's a cut to the bone. So that's the moment when the things have to be done, things have to be managed. And what's the worst thing that could happen when there's a huge cut, there's a huge crisis, is to not be prepared for it and take action during the crisis. So let's move on and think about trigger events. Now, establishing and aligning the whole management team on trigger events is fundamental, because there are two states of someone making a decision. There's this state where someone is rational, can think about the future a little bit and takes every variable into account. And there is the, oh, we have to cut everything. You know, like that's the state where you don't actually know. That's a little bit of panic going on. And we can see world leaders moving from this situation, like what they would do, what are they saying. They kind of tend to be, you could see some of them are ready and some of them aren't. And the difference between them, it's not the access to resources, is the fact that they were prepared to some of this, they had trigger events. They feel the same pain, they feel the same sensation, but they've talked about this. And they've talked about this when they were rational, they were smart and creative. So establishing and aligning on trigger events, it's important, and trigger events are objective and quantifiable. So it's not like we could say if things go bad. No, it's not things go bad. It's 10% down in revenue, or there is 30% down in number of people that log into an app or use our product. So it's very important. I can see it. There is no way of someone say, oh, we haven't actually reached the trigger event. Trigger events, you get the buy-in. You know, remember I've talked about it. It's like you get the buy-in from the whole leadership team, agrees with it, and they are based on as much as possible on real-time data. Now, I mean, for us, because we work in these digital companies, it's very obvious why real-time. But for other companies that don't have access, they would have to wait maybe for a few days to get revenues from all the franchises. That's hard. You want to have a trigger event that's based on something that you can measure right now. And of course, it's aligned to cash. Every trigger event, it's something from your cash flow that it's gonna happen, and you have to know what to do in that situation. And there is a very typical way of thinking like that, of thinking about it, like if what happens in 10%, 30%, and 50%. Even if you talk internally, maybe 50% sounds too harsh or 10% sounds too little, you can just make it. It's very important to get everyone in and see how does your model look. So let's see. So you've established a trigger event, and the trigger event is 5% loss in revenue. So those would usually qualify on the preemptive side. And I'm going to give you some examples. I give you these examples more to work to give you a mental model that you could use to think about the examples that you would want to have your agency. So an example one would be introductory pricing for acquisition. So you look at the pipeline, you'd have some people get there stuck a little bit. They're almost in working contract, or they just have to mail in the signature. Now, in preemptive state, what you do would say 10% or 20% off. And this is important. You've settled on this before having the pipeline only with people in almost signing contracts. So you've already thought about it. So the introductory pricing would be something that works for acquisition. Now, from an operations point, from a managing point of view, the first question is, as I showed you that the first vendor and how much it costs, is what kind of expenses could be put on hold with no harm. So you think about the company, it's a delightful company, you've built it, you like the people around you. If not, move. I mean, choose another company. It's so important to have a fantastic company and someone that you like around you. And you want to maintain culture, but there's also a time when there are some expenses that can be put on hold. This usually that's kind of like a CFO saying that there's always, if I ask someone to cut something 10%, they're not gonna miss it. It is because a lot of things that they just get there. Like that's for us personally. We kind of, if we look at our subscriptions, there's some things that we haven't used in a while. So what are those things? What's more of a, I think the more of a way of hygiene, financial hygiene in a way. So what expenses can be cut with no harm? And on the retaining part is focusing exactly on those, like you would look at the sheet and you would start with the top of it. But what are high value customers that could be put, that are at risk? And an obvious way of getting to better understand what's happening is to divert a little bit from the resources, from the ones that you see that are engaged, divert the resources towards engaging a little bit more with this one. And engaging is basically really simple. You call them and listen to them. Hey, what's happening? Oh, this and this and that, and I hate something like that. And our competitors are doing this. That's a very important part because you're gonna need that. All the information that you gather in a preemptive state, you're gonna need soon. Think it more like an intelligence gathering. So this is the preemptive state. This is usually companies with 10%. This is what they would think in this scenario where we lose 10%, we're gonna do this. So let's move on a little bit in a what if scenario. Now, what if, as I said, it's kind of, you feel it, you know something is happening. Maybe some companies are already in a what if scenario, and maybe the actions that they're making right now, they're on the spot. But the good part is that what if can change. Everything can change, and you can plan for that. You can now plan and think about what's going to happen in the future. So coming back, what if? From an acquisition part, now this is the moment, like an example for what would be really good for an SEO agency to do right now is to think about in terms of discounting for a longer term contract. Like give them incentive to choose you. Maybe they are in the bidding process. So make it, if it becomes a better deal for them and they kind of wait to see to negotiate something, discounting for longer term becomes an interesting idea. Now, from an operations point of view, capital expenses and sales incentives and bonuses. Now, these are the kind of things that when there is a 20% cut, you'd also have to talk with your managers about them. And you know how I've mentioned doing it before, because people can agree really easily on the fact that, yeah, of course, if the company doesn't work right, we can cut the yearly bonus or just transfer it for next year or something like that when things are good. But when things start to be shaky and you don't have the buy-in, you haven't talked about this, you didn't get everyone's concern and opinion, it's going to be a lot of more natural response to it. And when I say natural, I mean like fight or flight mode. So that's why I talked about it before. And in an operations point of view, it's in a what if scenario, it's a good idea to talk about short-term capital expenses. So from a retaining part, now in retaining part, there are so many ideas, and even on SEJ, I've seen so many articles with a lot of ideas about this. And I think one of them could be like an exclusive access to a service that you've been developing. Maybe for some SEO agencies, they could even think about, oh, we've trialed this with some of the smaller customers and we can give it to you, or we are trialing this new thing. And maybe you'd even think about, let's offer them a product. We haven't actually established how pricing works for it. But that's one thing. All the ideas that you're gonna come up with and that you're gonna gather from different articles and resources, because it's fascinating how fast people start thinking about them. You have to get them in a framework of thinking, because then you'll just get from a digital drawer, you get the ideas, the actions, and you will execute. And that's the fascinating part of using a strategic tool. Cool. So let's talk about the hardest one, when you have to become defensive. So now it's fight or flight for you. Now, from an acquisition point of view, it's already becoming really stringent. You would have to repackage services. An example would be to repackage services for margin. So it's not anymore, you would not talk about developing or acquiring this customer. Is how would our service with 5% or minus maybe margin would look like? And why is that important? You want to establish a contact, right? It's a monthly recurring revenue customer. That means this monthly engagement, and if you lose one, the other goes away as well. Maybe if the revenue goes away as well for a few months, but the engagement doesn't, then you immediately have access to the same customer. So repackaging some of your services for margin could be an option. You have so many, I guess there is so many ideas in the space, but that's the moment where acquisition kind of looks different, when you would want to acquire engagement with your company, not revenue. And from an operations point of view, unfortunately, I guess this is kind of like the hardest part, because one way of companies, they would think, okay, so we have payroll and we would just cut payroll without thinking, it was 3 months ago that our HR director, or I don't know, some manager said that we can't find anyone there, everyone's so expensive, and everything changed, you know, like in a minute. Things don't change. The relationship that you have with your customers and your employees does not change. It's still hard to find really someone who's really good, right? So being strategic about what is the specific time that you have to do this, it's important, because you can communicate it in advance and maybe prepare a little bit, but also there's an opportunity for finding ways of doing part-time work. Just as I said about keeping the relationship with your customers engaged, maybe there's a way to keep the relationship with people engaged. I know, and it's definitely hard for someone that relies exclusively for people because other people are renting. That's terrible for someone that has a hotel right now. What would they be able to do? We, in more of the services area, it's a little bit different, and that's why I'm talking about this. And from a retaining point of view, like there's a lot of customers, and there are some customers that they just like you, they want to make payroll, or they have obligations to try to stay afloat. So a good thing right now would be to just cancel the contracts, right? No, I'm kidding. So a good thing right now is to find ways to see what did that customer, what's the minimum amount of cost that you could allocate to the customer. Like maybe as you thought about, okay, so we have some expenses that we pay right now. Maybe even if you think like you're an SEO agency and you use a tool that tracks a lot of keywords for your customer, and customer says, hey, I'm not sure I can make my invoice this month. A better idea is to start looking in the way of pausing the campaign, like you can do on paid media. Find a service, find a platform where you could just archive it for a while and then restart it. When I say find a service, I obviously also look for SEOmonitor because of the dynamic pricing. But it's important to think about finding that place of keeping engagement. And I talked a lot about keeping engagement, and engagement has these weird things. People could tell a lot of things about it. In Facebook, it could be the number of minutes that you stay there, or for us as a company, for us, engagement means how many people would come to the app and use it, because if they use it, they get value from it. Now, in human, it's more about relationships. So there are some things that could appear in your customer's mind, right? Because they had a relationship with their account manager or client service team, and they could be concerned about what would happen if they move to a remote team. And what we see agencies doing proactively, and I find it, I was excited about it, is that they found a way to make those, like when you get the customer in the office and he sees everyone working on something, so he's relieved, yeah, so people are working here, so I'm paying for a service, I can see people working. How do you maintain that experience? Well, a good thing would be to inform them about your process, right? Like you start with videos or having even one-on-ones or having Zooms, whatever, and talking about like, how did you decide to do the remote work? How are you still keeping people in your company engaged so you can maintain the same level of awareness of, I don't know, quality of work and also work ethic? And there is this word TMI. Now, I guess for a month or so, there is no TM. There isn't too much information anymore. There is over communicate becomes the new normal, and the reason over communication becomes the new normal is because there is this hard part of being able to get the full breadth of non-verbal things. Like if I would meet with a customer and I could see, even though he would be cheery all the time, but I would feel something after a meeting, there's some information going on, right? And I felt that something isn't that good. Now, in order for me to get that information through email right now, that's unbelievable. There's a big chance I would not be able to read his emotional state right now. So doing things like going there and saying what we are as an SEO agency, what we are focusing on, and trying to get their feedback, trying to understand like what's happening in your place, what's your current status. And maybe weekly check-ins, they kind of think, oh my God, we're gonna invest so many hours in weekly check-ins. Just think about how much data you're gonna get. And I saw something, I think it's very interesting, is that what used to be a year, it's now a day, right? Like now in this huge global awareness of how many things are changing every day, a weekly check-in almost feels like a monthly check-in because there's so many things added. Why wouldn't that be applied to businesses as well? And this is the most important advice. To not give self-serving advice. It's just like me. I don't want to give you the advice of just do that or do that because it helps us. Some SEO agencies that we have in our portfolio, they're serving mostly travel customers. And travel customers are looking for a way to make payroll, and it's a time for them to pause things and figure things out with what's happening. There is no point in us being, oh no, go sell this to a travel company, because once demand goes there, they're gonna be the ones on top. There isn't a lot of proof on that. Now, being empathic, being there for them is much more important than just pushing them into a certain direction. So don't do that. Don't give something that's benefiting only you. And I think an important part of all of this is acknowledging uncertainty with your customers. If until now they would come to you and look and ask you things that for them they were very new, like what's happening, how many people are researching this, how many people are clicking, how many leads are from this campaign, you'd be able to get search volumes and quickly figure things out and explain to them, right? Now, the problem is that you can't anymore. Like every day now things changes, and if you only have monthly search volumes, then you need something more real, something more in place. So even fuzzy tools, not furry, so even fuzzy data tools like Google Trends could help them make sense of what's happening. So as I said, this is a strategic tool. Forget the advice that I gave you and take the most important part. You'd have to analyze it from an external and internal point of view, and then focus on what happens on those 3 specific trigger events, or have 5, it doesn't really matter, but acknowledge them. Set the meeting, schedule the meeting if you can, maybe even today with your team. Take the PDFs, print them and talk about them, and establish the points and what you as an SEO agency are well gonna do, because that's how you're gonna act as leaders to your teams and to your customers. Good. So we also, like, we did a workshop as well. Well, not because we do contingency plans. We're a 50% company. It's because we had to. So let me just show you some of the things. We are a software company. We work mostly with SEO agencies. We help them with acquiring more new customers, managing them, and retaining. So it was obvious that right now it was very important for SEO agencies to manage the relationships with their existing customers. So we did the same strategic thing, and I'm gonna just share with you some things that we that resulted from the workshop, and that happened 1.5 weeks ago. And the whole energy of the company, even though we switched to remote, the whole energy of the company was targeted towards that, and that was fascinating. All of that because of a very simple thing, like a very simple tool of thinking. So one thing that we started doing was to communicate something that we've been developing, or we had, I think it's 2016 when we launched it, was flexible pricing. The way we make money is if SEO agencies make money. So if they're tracking keywords, then they would pay SEOmonitor, and it's usually gradually pay less and less because of the volume pricing. And they would be able, SEO agencies are able to pause a campaign with just one click or archive it. So this part of dynamic pricing became very important for us, and we started communicating more about it, just like I'm doing right now. So we know this is an important part. It also, remember the strategic thinking, it's the opportunity part. We had something, ours, and now it's the time to talk more about it. Having dynamic pricing goes really well when SEO agencies need that. They don't need contracts. They need a quick way to move from one vendor to SEOmonitor or to another, and we actually allow imports. And they need a way to not pay for users or API access, or I don't know what other companies are charging right now. So that's one thing, an opportunity one. Now, another thing that I'm actually kind of publicly launching it here, it's called year-over-year search trends. We plan to launch it in a few days. You can visit it right now. It's trends.seomonitor.com. So this is totally free. It's based on our data that we have for millions and millions of keywords. And the way we would do keywords or ranking is daily on mobile and desktop. So that's an important bit that I have to add, because what we wanted to give people is, and especially SEO agencies, they need a way now to give information to their customers, like what's happening, how would the future look like? If until now SEO agencies would use SEOmonitor's forecasting tool, like to take all the inputs, and there is a brilliant article that we on SEJ about it, to take all the inputs that you would have, Google Analytics data, Search Console, search volume, conversion rate, and build the forecast and the proposal. Now companies, and that's the best point where an SEO agency could actually bring the value is, now SEO agencies are in the position where they can help their customers not only plan about marketing, but actually think about what's happening. Because you'd have differences in search volumes year over year. So you can now take the information that you have and forecast and think about the future. And you could be actually the puzzle or the input to their big P&Ls. So from an SEO agency, you move more from a consulting position because you'd have access to this data. And now a lot of the trends that we see in search, from search volumes and year over year, they usually reflect what's actually happening, right? It's not like people that do search online do this, it's people. So we're launching trends, year over year search trends. what I have here, this is an example data. So this is dummy data. It's not real data, but this is what's gonna happen. It's gonna show you exactly what happened after the outbreak. Did it go up or did it go down? And it's usable. You just have to sign up, and it's gonna be usable. And this is part ad because and part example of what happens when you take a strategic tool and then you get everyone's buy-in and the whole company moves towards implementing it. So enough of me talking. I've also asked people in the SEO industry to talk more about what's happening, the impact to working from home, and what's happening from a customer point of view. And I would go through each one of them, but I think it's more important to do a Q&A right now with you. So you can look through it on our on the webinar and the slides that you're gonna get. And I think it's best if we go through the Q&A. What do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for everything. We had a lot of questions coming in. Now's a great time to ask any questions you may have, and we'll take things from there. One of the questions that I just saw popping up quite a bit is, where do you get the data for trends.seomonitor.com? And is that available to everyone to utilize for free?
So trends at SEO, it's free. We provide it for markets where there's Google there. So we usually use search volumes, but we have a history of search volumes. So we are in a position we can actually provide this. What happens from a near or over year point of view.
Okay, cool. Hey, how's it going? I can see you now, Alan. Or you can see me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I can see you before. Now you should be able to see me. I'm taking your advice and getting on via video.
All
Let's
right.
talk face to face during this time and make things happen. So we have about 15 minutes of Q&A. Here's the first one coming from my man Ethan down in Baltimore. So I've had people call and cancel or put contracts on hold when they're currently doing better than ever. We're talking about 40 to 50% increase in sales. How should they handle that? The clients are asking for an out or to put things on hold, primarily because of what's going on, but they're making more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And should they let them out of the contracts immediately or hold them to 60 days? Very specific question. Wanted to get your input there, Alan, for Ethan, and then I'll lend my thoughts as well.
That's a very interesting point. Like we also see companies or our companies of companies like that are doing really well because they're affected by the fact that there's a huge demand for like the gels and everything, like, but those retailers are doing really well right now. They know they'll go down because they see how the value chain has changed. So maybe if we get a little bit more specific, like what kind of companies are these ones? Would they eventually go down, or are they just opportunistic right now? Like I've seen some companies just saying, hey, we have to close the company, but it has nothing to do with coronavirus. The company wasn't really working well. So I think the question is it sustainable, their uplift? Is it like Uber Eats kind of uplift right now, and once the lockdown is on, you can't access Uber Eats as well? Or is it more of there's only demand right now for a very specific niche kind of thing, the customers that are referring?
Yeah, Ethan, if you could fill us in on what industries they are or what kind of behavior you're seeing as an effect of this, that would be really helpful. I totally agree. There's going to be another thing to think of is we may be seeing an increase in, well, actually, Yapo put out a study today saying that there's been an increase in things like CBD, zinc, supplements, creams, sanitizers, etc. Right? But a lot of the same companies which may be selling those online also are dependent upon traditional forms of distribution through brick and mortar retailers, supermarkets, etc. I'll tell you what, nobody's going to go to the supermarket right now and try to buy half of those products because they have to be unlocked and you don't want to go in the supermarket anyway, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with sitting down with the clients and understanding the what, when, why, where, how behind their decision-making process. Any thoughts there?
That's the, I can't add something more than that. Yeah, it's really getting into understanding what right now, what's in their mind as well. Because as I heard it, someone that does better canceling, that kind of seems erratic. You want to hear why. And I just can give a quick example from Europe. So you get a huge demand from Amazon right now. You know, like the stock is up. They want to employ so many people in the States, but in Europe they just decided they can't deliver anything but essentials. So you know, like this huge demand for e-commerce that actually can't be fulfilled anymore. So they had like what, a few weeks of a lot of demand, and now they just can't do it anymore. And I think other countries are gonna go through this as well, where you can't fulfill the demand anymore.
Yeah,
that's why they're making a good revenue.
And you know, also, I think it depends on how the client is communicating with you. If it's their buyer or legal emailing you saying we want to be out, we want to execute our out, then bill them for 60 days, right, till they execute their out, right? If it's their CMO or CEO or VP sitting down with you and having a one-on-one discussion on what's going on, that's your opportunity to introduce ways that you can help, right? And also that's your opportunity to understand, if they can be empathetic as much as you can, it's your chance to really understand what's going on from a business perspective at that company, right? So, you know, I had a call with a client yesterday where they've cut their PPC, but what we did was we identified their top performing PPC channels and keyword buckets and cross-referenced that with organic ranking data, right? And then now what we're doing is we're embarking on a content campaign where we're building new pages on their sites to rank for those terms that we're traditionally bringing in PPC. There's two reasons for that. One, PPC has less long-term value, right? There's no compound benefit to the site or the brand long-term once you acquire a customer via PPC, unless that customer is a subscription customer. Two, and SEO does that, right? So investment in SEO leads to a compound benefit for the company over time. Two is that in addition to them cutting their PPC, there's lots of others cutting their PPC budget. So in traditional Google results, what you would see would be 4 ads above the organics. Now there's 1 or 2, sometimes 0, because PPC budgets are being cut across the board. That does open up an opportunity. So in the same way that you went,
CTRs are going to change. I mean, I don't have access to data, but or tool guides where you could see each result and each day what kind of search features does it have, how many ads does it have, and you then can see how many sessions you had, you know, like in Google Analytics, because you would get the data. So I think this is, and I think your idea is perfect, you know, like that's the moment when you start acting like a consultant and you start thinking about it more like, no, okay, just cut it or do this. Is what is the opportunity right now for you as a customer to better understand, not understand, it's to get value out of it, get long-term value, and instead of just saying, no, please pay or something, please pay for the exact same thing that I've done until now.
Yeah, and if they're not making the point to communicate with you, just keep on billing them until they're out. It's executed. Next question is, this is kind of an add-on to that. What areas of SEO could you see getting more focused during this time? For example, Brian, who wrote this in, could see local SEO, specifically Google My Business, becoming more important as companies need to keep their info clear and current. Any tips there, Alan?
I don't have specific GMB tips. I think it's more, I think it kind of relates to the place where I was saying about being a consultant now. Like if they need this, it's not about SEO anymore. You're gonna teach them about digital transformation a lot more faster. Everything that I think even Google planned GMB is gonna be big in 5 years, or huge in 5 years. It's gonna be fast because more people would use online tools to get the sense of what things are going. So maybe it's more of a consulting part than SEO only, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, I'm also wondering if we're going to see changes with Google in the way that they serve search results, with some queries that traditionally they would serve localized queries for. If things are moving more e-com during this time, if all the businesses are closed, then why even serve the results? Now,
Yeah.
on the flip side of that, I have had clients that are closing their stores and their schools and things like that. So what we're trying to do is make the most out of things like posts within Google My Business and other forms to communicate within Google My Business to funnel that traffic and those leads into their online, right? Used to be directions, right? Or phone
Only
calls
that.
or
Yeah.
people going to the store. How can you funnel that, right? Internal, right? So through posts, through updates on the site, even having someone on the other end. There's a lot of phone numbers right now that are going directly to voicemail, right? Even using an answering service to recommend people that go to the website could help quite a bit with converting that traffic into online.
Those are brilliant ideas. I mean,
Okay, so we talked a little bit in your presentation about negotiation of services, whether you're
yeah.
lowering your rates, cutting off some of your services, um, or maybe changing your billing. Why should someone underprice their services to keep the customer? Had a lot of questions about this.
Yeah, of course, right? It's as I talked about them. I never managed pricing. It's not about having this doing the exactly same thing and just cutting prices, right? It's every time you do something, there's some costs, there's some inputs to your service. Maybe it's the cost of software, maybe it's the cost of graphic design, or there's basically the PPC cost. So all those things are costs. Then you add the markup, and then you have revenue. Now it's time to get back to thinking about what are the inputs that I was selling until now. Is this a moment where I can become more cost efficient? And also, when we talk about price and we remove all of this from price, then it becomes meaningless. You can't undercut, just go there and say, yeah, I'm just gonna undercut using the same inputs. Now it's the time to get even more creative in the way the service works. So that's what I meant about margin, or focus about margin. It's more like, can we keep the same margin but remove some of the costs because there isn't value anymore into that? Maybe they don't care right now about social media posting, or they really care a lot about that because they can't get people, like Lauren mentioned, they can't get people there. So think about the products from that point of view. Don't just sell it, like it's not idea to just sell it lower. The same thing.
Yeah, also one thing I would say is that as an SEO with access to Google Analytics, you don't only have data on SEO performance, right? So as a consultant, it may be smart to look at total channels and seeing where there's year-over-year drop-off and where there's opportunity, and reminding the client on that. So for example, if you see a drop-off on something like affiliate revenue, well, maybe if the client was paying for you to do outreach to blogs to get a link, perhaps there's the ability to do outreach to publishers to introduce them to the affiliate program and work with those publishers to do email blasts and things like that to get immediate revenue back to the client. I think by going outside of the box, especially on a time like this, you're going to prove your value to the client at the end of the day. And really all good SEOs have a feeling for, everything across the board. So if you're consulting and there is a little bit of a drop off in SEO, or your client is asking questions, utilize this time to put on your multiple consulting hats and look at the data across the board, because maybe there's ways that you can increase instant revenue as opposed to thinking 6 months, 12 months down the road, if that makes sense. Okay. Anything else, Alan? we've reached our hour.
Yeah, we reached our, that was a fascinating hour. So I just want to let people know about the trends.seomonitor.com. This is really new because I just got it from the engineering team that I can talk about it. It's the free tool that I encourage you to sign up to it. And because what we see SEO agencies doing it right now, it's exactly the consulting part, helping companies figure things out and how things would look in February and how things will look after it. Lauren, really great seeing you, and I am like really seeing you again. And to all the ones that are home right now, I wish you a really good day forward. So
Absolutely. So just to let everyone know, it's trends.seomonitor.com. I just dropped a link in the channel here within GoToWebinar. And we're really excited about you sharing this. I see that we have a landing page set up, so go ahead to trends.seomonitor.com, put in your email address, get access, and pull these trends along with other trends that may be affected right now to get an idea of what's going on during this crisis in time. Just as a reminder, for the questions that we did not get a chance to address, we're going to be sending them over to Alan and the SEO Monitor team to look into. And the slides, the video, and recap of this webinar will be made available very shortly from Search Engine Journal. Thank you very much, Alan and the team at SEO Monitor. Really appreciate. Now we can finally share us working from our homes
yeah,
and
this
not.
is a real home. I actually
Yeah.
have, yeah, I had the cat that was literally on the desk right now, so it's very work from home stuff. She left. I don't know why, but thank you guys. So hopefully see you soon, and thanks for, I know, participating. Really, really appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye.
fantastic. For those of you that are left, we're going to have a quick questionnaire after the webinar. Please fill it out. Talk to you soon. Thank you again. Hang in there, everybody.